Hi guys, my name is Mohammed, and in this video I'm going to show you the differences between private and standard channels in Microsoft Teams. If you just want to watch a basic video on what private channels are, I have another video for it and it's mentioned in the description below. In this video, I'll start with the general differences and then cover the differences more specific to storage, settings, permissions, and limitations. After watching this video, you will understand team channels much better and can better describe which one to use when. I tried categorizing those differences and let's go through each category. So what is the main difference when you end up creating a channel? The first difference is, and you can actually see that it basically has a lock icon right next to the channel in itself. So any time that you see this lock channel, the lock sign, then this basically means that this is a private channel, whereas the other channel like this one over here and anything else does not have the lock icon next to it. The second major difference is the private channel basically limits communication to a set of people in a team. Whereas a standard channel like the general or anything that you create over here, any of these channels over here, they pretty much have all the team members, or they actually have all the team members that the team itself have. You cannot limit those team members, but you can do that in the private channel. The third difference is you can delete and leave a private channel. Like for example, this is a private channel over here, and I can delete this since I'm the owner of this channel, and I can also leave the channel. But if it's a standard channel here, then I can just delete it, but there's no way that I can leave a channel. So these are some of the general differences. Let's go ahead and take a look at a lot of those other differences. Now let's take a look at the storage differences between a private and a standard channel. The main difference is the files for a private channel are stored in a separate private channel specific SharePoint site collection. Let's go ahead and take a look. So here I'm in Teams, and if I'm looking at a private site collection, a private channel, and if I go to the SharePoint site associated with this private channel, then you're gonna see that it's got its own specific site collection. So this is what it opens up, and so this is you can actually take a look at the URL up in the top, and so this is basically it suffixes the private channel next to after the name of the team in itself. So the name of the team is Sales McDonald's, and then the private channel is Payroll. So, and also if you go in Documents here, then the only folder that you see is Payroll. That's all you see. You don't see the other folders for the other standard channels. But this is the SharePoint site collection for the team in itself. And if I go in demo over here, then I can see the different standard channels. So these are the different standard channels. So let me take you back to Teams here. So general, marketing, and technical proposal, general, marketing, and technical proposal. So these are basically, and so all of that, so all those standard channels are sitting in the same site collection as the team in itself. Also, if the private channel site collection is deleted without deleting the private channel, then it automatically gets restored in 4 hours. Yes, seems like it gets restored in 4 hours. And finally, I'm in the SharePoint administration window over here. And if I do a search for McDonald's, the list of all the site collections over here, we start with McDonald's, then the only one that I see is the Sales McDonald's, which is really for the whole team in itself, which basically holds all the standard channels. But even from the administration window over here, I cannot access the private channel site collection. So really what's happening here is Microsoft is pretty much just hiding the site collection which is associated with the private channels. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the different settings which are there on the private channel, and you probably might not see these settings on the standard channel. So we're going to see that the private channels have their own settings which are separate from the teams. So it's got a whole different set of settings, whereas a standard channel pretty much just inherits the settings from the teams in itself, from the whole team in it. So I'm on a private channel, which is payroll. And then if I click on the ellipse over here and go to manage channel, then I'm going to see a whole lot of settings. The first one is the members. So I can actually go ahead and add its own members or owners or guests as well. And these have to be part of the team in itself, but I can explicitly add only those people that I want. So it's going to be a private space. It's going to be a subset of some of the other users. If I go to settings over here, then it's got a whole different load of settings, which is manage permissions, mentions in itself. So this is what I was talking about. I can actually go ahead and choose if the channel is allowed to be mentioned, and then there's this its own analytics as well. So you can see that there's a whole lot of settings over here which you will not find. Now I'm looking at a standard channel, and if I go to the settings over here, then you're going to see that there really are not that much of settings over here. Especially there are no permission settings over here, kind of like adding owners or different set of owners or members or guests. This basically inherits all its permissions from the team in itself, and it basically lacks a lot of different options. Also, a couple of interesting things is that when you create a private channel, you become the owner of the private channel, even if you're not the owner of the team. And lastly, if the last owner is removed, then another user is automatically promoted as the owner. This mechanism pretty much just makes sure that there's always an owner to a private channel. And one last difference is if I'm looking at the settings of the teams of the team in itself, then there's a very under settings and under member permissions, there's a setting over here which allows members to create private channels. So if I uncheck this, then even the members of this team, so I can take a look at the members of the team over here, even they wouldn't have permissions to create private channels. Now let's take a look at the differences when it comes down to permissions. So the private channels and standard channels are very different, how they actually work with the permissions in itself. So if you go back, and the first thing is that, as I've mentioned before, if I'm on a private channel, then it's got its own set of permissions, which basically means that I can add a member, I can add an owner to a private channel in itself. But a standard channel basically inherits all of this from the team in itself. I cannot add, there's no option to actually add members to a standard channel. They have to be added to the team in itself, and they trickle down to all the standard channels. Also, the private channel has its own owner, and this owner can be different from the team owner in itself. Even the team owners that are not part of the private channel cannot access the private channel. So I can actually have several different owners of the team in itself, and none of them can have access to the private channel here. Also, only the owner of the private channel, since I'm the owner of this payroll channel, I can go ahead and add other members. Nobody else, even the team owner, cannot do that. Also, team owners have no access to any of the content within this private channels, not even the files, not even the conversations. The permissions to the private channel SharePoint site are managed in the teams. So if you want to manage any kind of permissions, then you got to make sure that you do it right from here in itself. You cannot go to the site collection and then do it from there. It has to be managed right from here in itself. But whereas when it comes down to a standard channel, you can do it from here, or you can do it from the site collection as well. Also, permissions are synced automatically every 4 hours from the team site collection to the private channel site collection, which pretty much means that if a user has been removed from the teams, then all those permissions are basically synced, and that user is also going to be removed from the private channel. That applies even for the standard channel as well. But then there's a certain sync job which runs every 4 hours and does that. Finally, the guests cannot create a private channel, but whereas guests can create standard channels if they have permissions to. And of course, these guests are the external users who don't have an Office 365 account. Let's take a look at the differences when it comes down to limitations. You can have a maximum of 30 private channels in a team, whereas public channels, they can be a lot more, which is standard channels, they can be a lot more, which is 200. There's a limit of 250 members on a private channel, and there's a limit of 5,000 members on a standard channel. Private channels do not support bots, apps, or scheduled channel meetings, whereas the standard channels do. And you can take a look at it over here. This is a standard channel that I have, and I can actually go ahead and add any of these apps over here. But if I go to a private channel, then you can see that I cannot add, as of right now, at the least I cannot add any kind of apps to my private channel. Let's take a look at the differences when it comes down to DLP and eDiscovery. So one of the major differences is records for messages sent are delivered to the mailboxes of all the PC members rather than to a group member. Whereas for a standard channel, conversations are emailed to the group mailbox. This is one of the major differences. And this is the reason why when eDiscovery is to be configured for private channels, so it needs to be, so this basically means that the search needs to be done across the entire team, the site collection associated with the private team, because every private channel basically has got its own site collection other than the site collection of the teams that it's associated with. So that's two different site collections at the least. And then along with that, since messages are being sent directly to all the private channel members, so that's a third thing, which is the mailboxes of all the private channels needs to be searched as well for eDiscovery, which kind of like makes it a little more complex. Whereas for a standard channel, it's basically eDiscovery is done just by searching the team's SharePoint collection in itself. When it comes down to DLP, as of April 2020, DLP is not supported for private channels, but it's supported for standard channels. But I'm pretty sure that this feature is going to be coming pretty soon. Finally, if you like this video, don't forget to click on the like button and subscribe to my channel.